I think that's actually a perfect transition into what I wanted to talk about next. And I think it has to do with human nature and why a lot of times we choose wrong. You know, human nature, or something interesting about human nature, is that people often know what the right thing to do is, and they still choose something different. I mean, you see it every day in life. I mean, we live that. Even us here, talking to each other, and this involves broken relationships, selfish decisions, and moments of pride. And going back to Genesis, it seems to describe something about human nature that still shows up today. So, my question would be to you, is why do you think humans repeat those patterns so often? And you kind of dove into it a little bit, but what is your mindset when you think about that?
Yeah. So, what patterns are we talking about again? Just reiterate what kind of patterns. Are we talking about patterns of failing or patterns of losing faith? Like, what kind of patterns?
Yeah, like you said, like patterns of broken relationships, selfish decisions, and moments of pride, things that would go against what, especially what Genesis, talks about, like just going against what's meant for them, and
You
living
answered
a
it.
life.
You answered it right there, bro. I gotta say, it's pride. I mean, we can get into the minute details, right? We can break it down if we need to break it down, but the essence of it all is pride. So it's funny you say that because okay, you said broken relationships, obviously, right? Same kind of failed patterns, whether that's the guy who's trying to recover from drinking way too much, and shout out to anybody who likes a couple of beers, right? With no discrimination here, right? But he overdoes it, right? And is like, man, he gets in the fight with his friends. We're talking about those people, dude. What is that? That is pride. And when you break down pride, there's a factor that says you are not a humble person, that you are not wise, and that you make foolish tendencies because of your pride. I'm not going to lie, as a man right now,
One thing that's interesting about human nature is that people often know what the right thing to do is, but they still choose something different. You see it every day in life, broken relationships, selfish decisions, and moments of pride. Genesis seems to describe something about human nature that still shows up today. So, my question is, why do you think humans repeat those patterns still so often?
You're talking about some garden type stuff. I mean, we gotta go to the garden, bro. We gotta go to the garden, man, because the garden says they both knew what was going on, man. Eve knew not to bite the apple, and she took a bite of it anyway. There was things there that was promising, bro. Like I got it up right here. It says the serpent was crafty, sure, and then if you eat it, you're gonna die. We can eat all the other fruit in the garden, but here you go. You're not gonna die. And it says right here, verse 6, chapter 3. She saw the fruit, and it was good, and it was pleasing to the eye. Same thing we were talking about earlier, bro. Less of the eyes, the less of the flesh, and the pride of life. So hear this out. It's pleasing to the eyes, and it was desirable for the gaining of wisdom. Pride. She took some and she ate it. She took some and she ate it, and she was told also that she wasn't going to die. So what was the risk of it? It was all the rewards, and
Mm.
completely forgot the risk. All the rewards, and that's the key to it.
And you think that's the same issues we face today? That people often just look at what the reward is, and they don't understand the other side of that coin.
I would ask you a question. Do you think there's an issue with understanding, or it's just
We're not supposed to understand it. You there? All right, all right. So, can you ask me that question one more time? What was your follow up to that?
you gotta ask me the question? Okay, so what was
No,
the
no. So we were on the subject of humans, people, often knowing what the right thing to do is, and how they still choose something different.
and you asked me
And
probably
and so my follow up to that was, why do you think humans repeat those patterns so often? And then we started talking about, all right. Can you repeat that question for me one time?
Yeah, so the question was is we were talking about Eve going for all of the rewards instead of looking at the risk that would come with it. And we know the risk is death. But we can go, obviously scriptures go on. My question, because you asked me, was is it just the ignoring of the risk at all just for the reward? Now I'd say is that rather than the ignoring is I would ask you is the person not that's the key. Is the person just choosing to ignore the risk, or don't they know the risk at all? Like, what is your take on that? Somebody actually just saying that, hey, F the risk, I'm gonna do it regardless. Excuse my language.
No, I definitely think a lot of people know the risk. I think it's just human nature, like you said, like with Adam and Eve, they knew, they were told what the outcome was going to be if they didn't listen, and they still decided not to listen. And I think that's the same crisis we face today. Like in relationships, you could be married and understand the consequences of if you cheat, this is what's going to happen, and still decide to cheat. If you are a bad father, your kids ending up growing up a certain way and still deciding to be a bad father. So I think people know they just choose, what fulfills them at that moment. It's especially in our day and age now, it's short term fulfillment. It's not seeing the bigger picture, the end of the tunnel. It's about what makes me happy today. um,
Oh, bro. I agree. No, I agree 100%. I think that's the main issue. Come on, man. All right, bro. You had your camera time.